All right, this was from a conversation that probably happened about 2 years ago with Chris Doe. He's the closest thing I have to a mentor, and I was getting ready to launch this pilot project for this YouTube series on this channel. And I was pretty nervous about it because the format was pretty unique. I don't know I'd really seen that format been used. I'm not really comfortable talking on camera yet. I think I'll get there one day, but I'm a lot more comfortable doing voiceovers. And I'm more comfortable doing candid or lifestyle or documentary shots where I'm not acting or reading from a script. So I wanted him to kind of talk me through that, get some permission to do that maybe. And more than that, I was going to be talking about some controversial topics. This stuff that they don't really teach you in school about business is that there's going to be some business breakups along the way, most likely. And it was a really good conversation. It was really valuable to me. Super grateful for his time. If you don't know who he is, you can check out the Christo on Instagram or the future, but if you're watching this channel, you probably know who he is already. The first part, we talk about transparency. I start out with the question, how transparent should you be? Or like, how transparent is too transparent when it comes to this sort of thing? The second part that I've broken up is about business partnerships and when or if you should ever get into a business partnership, how you should structure it. So this is some pretty high level business stuff. We don't go super nitty gritty into like anything design, but if you're interested in making content or brand storytelling, that sort of thing, you might find it interesting. All right, I hope you enjoy.
All right, close the door. So Mason, you're going to be driving the agenda for whatever we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm ready to go, man.
Okay. Today's agenda is just going to be about transparency. I'd like to know like how transparent you are, where you draw the line, because right now I'm working on this project. I've explained it to you. It's a kind of more like a vlog that's a documentary series style.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, let's just start there. So as far as like numbers on jobs you're pitching and stuff, some people are kind of like, I don't know if you want to be putting this out there and
Mm-hmm.
telling people that you didn't close that job and you lost this job. And so where do you draw the line with that sort of thing?
Okay, that's a very good question. So where do you draw the line for transparency and how much do you want to reveal to people? That's a question that most people are not even, they're even afraid to ask that kind of question. So I would like for you to look at the answer through the prism of what makes sense for the audience I'm talking to. There's no point in talking about numbers unless you're going to make a point. So sometimes I will talk about $1 million job that we lost, what it meant to us, and what we learned in the process. So the number is just one point of the story, not the whole point. Because otherwise you're just dropping numbers and like people will either relate or not relate to that. And
Mm-hmm.
if for me the way I make decisions as to what to share and what not to share is this going to help somebody? Is this going to illuminate something? Otherwise, then I don't feel like I'm not compelled to share it.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to get into specifics about your story and how it can help you make that decision?
Yeah, that'd be good. First of all, like I do have some samples of what I'm working on. I know you like to say show, don't tell, so I can tell you about what I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you'd prefer me to just like send you a link and you can watch like the first minute or two of it, or would you rather me just kind of describe it so that
I would have you describe it now, and then in post we can edit that clip in.
okay. We'll start with the numbers as far as transparency. So last year I closed my first $10,000 job,
Mm-hmm.
which was about it was about double my usual job. So my average before last year was probably about 5,000,
Mm-hmm.
and then last year I closed a $10,000 job. That was before I found you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I moved back from China. We opened up this studio in Salt Lake City. One of my partners brought in a lead. We closed it, and it was in total about 20 grand. And that was the job I was saying I just barely found you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So since then, I've been trying to step it up quite a bit from there. And I'm not really interested in any smaller jobs anymore because I've had that taste, you know?
Yeah, it's hard to go back.
Yeah. I keep it really low overhead. Everything's cash operated. So it's like, man, if I can close a $100,000 gig, that's like creative room
Hmm.
for a year to plan my next thing,
Okay.
you know? There's been multiple jobs along the way that were within that range. And, you know, looking back on it, I think it was a good thing we didn't close it, even though I wanted it at the time. But, you know, those clients that you can just tell they're going to be a pain in the ass
Right.
down the road. And so it's kind of a good thing that we didn't close some of those jobs. But my original concept was to kind of maybe do some motion graphics, and I do have some screen captures from it and some B-roll recorded conversations from along the way, but kind of do a timeline and a picture of what it looks like and the progression of trying to step up and up. And I guess sometimes I even feel like this when I'm talking on the pro calls or whatever, but I don't want to seem like I'm either like puffing my own chest or like getting lost in the minutia of the numbers or like trying to make myself look better than other people that I'm trying to help up.
Hmm.
So I want to frame it in the right way that it's only helping people.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's a good question to ask. If you were to think about jumping to the end of a story, the conclusion, what do you want somebody to learn from either reading something you wrote or watching your video? If you start with that, you know how when you go and see a public speaker and like, if you can only remember one thing that I say today, do this, remember this. That's kind of
Mm-hmm.
where you want to start your story. If once
Okay.
you know like what somebody should take away from the video, then you would then only include parts of the story that help somebody to understand that point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and
Okay.
that's the big thing. So if I say in this video you're going to learn 5 things that you should never say or only do on your first sales call, and here there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then everything that I choose to show will only support that. And everything, because our stories are complicated, there's lots of things to get through and people can get lost in the details of your story. So you have to be a very judicious editor and cut that stuff out, because otherwise
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be confusing, it's going to be hard to track along, and then they're going to start to question, where are you taking me, what's your motivation, where's this all going? But if you knew
Yeah.
that that's what you're going to say, then all that builds into that. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so when you're talking about getting caught up in the minutia, that's just not editing at all. Or if you throw out some big numbers, or you talk about your success, but you never talk about how you got there or what it is that you need to do or what you learned from it, and then it's just like, well, Mason's just flossing on me right now. He's flexing. Like, this is all, he's just telling me about the Lambo he just pulled up in, but he didn't tell us how he got there.
Mm-hmm.
So I already know part of your story arc, at least things that I would want to know as a person who's tuning in, is what changes did you have to make to go from 10K to 20K, and from 20K, I'm sorry, from 5 to 10 and then 10 to 20.
Mm-hmm.
And what you need to realize is each time you move up the rung, it's not a linear change you have to make, it's an exponential change. Because as soon as you start to lift up the budget, it includes some much bigger players that you don't even know how to compete against today.
Yeah.
That's what I learned, because I learned that I thought for a long time we were playing in the majors when in fact we were in the minors once we crossed over a certain threshold. Now,
Mm-hmm.
once you get over into the $1 million budgets, and then I think you're pretty safe to say 1 million to 50 or 100 million, it's all going to be the same, because only the top tier players compete in this space.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So I want to ask you, what happened between 5 to 10K? What did you fundamentally change about the way you work, about the way you present yourself, or even just the way you bid? What was that? And that's the learning lesson. So do you know the
So
answer?
to, I do.
Okay.
One quick question.
Hmm.
So is that where you're thinking I would linearly start with the story progression?
I would start somewhere like there. You
Mm-hmm.
can say that I've gone through a lot of changes, and I've started to notice, I started to recognize certain patterns that in order for me to double my income, these things had to happen. They are X, Y, and Z. And let me take you back. So a few years ago, I was in China. Then I'm ready to hear your story, because now I'm looking or listening to that story through a very specific lens or prism, and I'm going to be filtering that in. Otherwise, I'm like, where is he taking me on any of this stuff?
Mm-hmm. Does it seem like I should start with how I went from like that first step instead of starting on say step 3 and taking a less linear route through the story?
What do you
Because
mean that?
sometimes I think I do like linear storytelling, like this happened and this happened and this happened, but sometimes I think it's interesting to be like, this thing happened over here, and then let's divert a little bit and go back, and it's because this thing happened beforehand.
Yeah, so there's something about telling a story from chronological point of view, which is natural how people want to say and tell stories, but it's not the most interesting or captivating way to tell it. Now,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the critical steps that you had to make, you can edit to only the ones that you think are the best. Because I can tell you 50 things that you need to do to go from billing 5 to 10K, but that's too many for people to recognize and process. So you can reduce it down to 3 or 5 or even just 1. So in the short answer to your question is go and skip step 1 and 2 if it's not really eye-opening. Because people are like, here's what you got to do. It's like, you have to wake up. I'm like, no, I know that step. You have to breathe. Okay, I know that one too. So you don't want to tell people things that they already know.
Mm-hmm. Let's try and wrap up the whole numbers thing
Okay.
idea. So it would be interesting as long as I'm telling people how I got there. I got
Yeah.
that. As far as the future with you guys telling numbers, I know you guys have been more and more transparent with it. It seems like, do you see any problems with see, because I have this concept, I'd ideally like to be bringing in real clients that I want to be working with, like such brands that I love,
Right.
and be doing like live strategy sessions with them
Mm-hmm.
and bringing it into the storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
So not only do people know that I worked with a client with this budget, but they know who the client is, and they know the client's goals, and they see like I'm like opening up a window to the client as well. Like, have you guys experimented with anything like that?
Okay, I see now. I think you want to do what we're doing or plan to do, right? So I then need to look back and how did we get here and to make sure you're not jumping past critical steps in order to get what you want. We are
Mm-hmm.
not at that place yet where we can share transparently in real time a project that I'm working on with a real paying client. Because then they're like, well, what benefit is there to us? You're exposing us. We may come across as looking disingenuous or bad or mean, or we're like we don't know what we're doing. Those are not good things, especially as you want to charge more money. So I
Yeah.
think you have to ask yourself, what's more important in this moment in time for you to bring on the clients that you love to get paid what you want, or the potential media exposure that you're going to get for that. So here's where I have a sliding scale. So if it's a client that I really want and the brand is amazing, let's just do the work first. Let's get the work in house, get the experience, get the notch on our belt, and to be able to produce an amazing case study after the fact. But if it's a client that's small, I still love them, but they don't pay me enough. I can close the gap, and we've done this before, where we say normally I would charge you $100,000 to do this, but since you only have 30, the only concession I'm going to ask you for a concession. Otherwise, I can't take on the project. Is that I get to record and document this and share it with my community. And over
Mm-hmm.
time, as your community grows, that's going to be an asset, not a liability. We're not there yet. I think when we cross 1 million or 2 million subscribers, clients will seek us out specifically to have our story or the project air because they're getting additional promotion and publicity out of it. But we're not there. We're at 400,000 subs, so and our videos, since they speak to a very narrow audience, don't get that kind of viral spreading across the internet where people go crazy over.
Yeah.
So I also have to think about it from the point of view of the client. What's in it for us? We seem to be risking a lot and we're paying you the same amount of money. So why would we agree to do this? And most clients are going to say no. Now, there
Mm-hmm.
is somebody out there in the field who is a client of ours. They're also friends of ours in similar industries. And they said, Chris, I don't have a ton of money. We can pay you a certain amount. They're going to pay us $20,000 to do an identity standards manual and help them kind of figure out a more cohesive brand expression across all their channels. He said to me specifically, go and share all of it in real time, whatever you want. I trust you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the beginning of the kind of relationship that I want to have. But it's $20,000 for the work. It's not 60 or 80,000.
Yeah.
So that's the compromise we're willing to make on both sides.
For a bigger company, you think there's too much liability at the moment for them?
There's just no incentive. And you also have to think the person that you're talking to is probably chief marketing officer or director of marketing, something like that, or potentially the director of technology or VP.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is they're unsure of the result. So by allowing you to broadcast and share this, it may come back to bite them in the butt and cost them their job.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to think of the risk that they're taking on. You're going to be more successful doing this for people who are the key decision maker, the chief executive officer, the founder, somebody like that. And you getting access to somebody like that at the highest level is going to be difficult for you today. Not tomorrow, but just today.
Okay. I mean, I asked you a question maybe a month or so ago on one of the pro calls. It was, if you really want to work with a client, would you consider giving it away for free? And you were like, yeah, 100%. So I guess I do see that there could be a leverage point where, as I'm trying to hone in and practice my strategy, like you were saying, sometimes you'll say first session's on me.
Yeah.
So perhaps you could have like a one single session where you bring a client in. Maybe they're not the biggest client, but somewhere in that bell curve. And you're like, hey, first strategy session's on us as long as we get it broadcasted, something like that.
Yeah. So when I was trying to sell strategy and do work that we've never done before, I had to pick the right client, and we can talk a little bit more about what a right client looks like and sounds like. I had to pick the right client in order to offer my services, because it's a game of chicken. Like, who's going to blink first? It's either you take a step towards them or the client takes a step towards you. And if you're tired of waiting around and it's like, I think I found the right client, let's do this, and you just offer to do it for free. Now, I want to clarify that the project was not free. The project was for a pretty decent budget, and I think it's somewhere between $30,000 to $80,000. I just decided to give them this extra thing on top of it. So it's not like I didn't make any money on it. I did. I need to get paid, generally speaking. So I just want to make sure that whoever's watching this, they have some context that, oh, Chris is advocating to do free work just because you like the client. I am not. I'm very strategic. I'm very specific, and I'd like to get paid first and then add something else on top. Now, when I say first session's on me, typically what I'm saying is, I know that there's some resistance to you trying to do strategy with me. So I'm just going to demonstrate it for you in the next 45 minutes to kind of show you how it works and why it's very different than something else that you may have experienced. And then that's a taste. That's the lady in front of C's Candies, or not C's Candies, Mrs. Fields Cookies, who gives you a little sample, right? You walk down the mall, you're kind of hungry, you eat it, and you're like, that was really good. Yeah, maybe I'll take the whole cookie then. So I just want to give them a taste. So either they bought something and I'm adding like free whipped cream on top, or I just give them a taste of it to see if they're interested in doing a full engagement, because I still want to get paid. Okay. And as the last resort, I've never done something before. I really want to do it. I need to pick the right client. I'm willing to do it for free, so then you can do it. Now, what's the right client? I think the right client has to be really open-minded, who's fair, who can appreciate the things that you do. Otherwise, you're just setting yourself up for disaster. And if that's the case, I'd rather do a fictitious project for myself than for a non-paying client.
Cool.
Okay.